Good afternoon and welcome to America's Home Cooking. I am in Amelia Simmons' cookbook of 1796 and they talk about puddings. Now I want to make a rice pudding because this one's really unusual. You know how we make ours, it's very modern, so I'm not even going to do that. But this one has rose water in it. It says 8 eggs. Now their chickens were smaller because when they say fried chicken, they quarter their chickens and they sit there and fry it like that. So they had smaller birds. So instead of 8 eggs, I'm going to use 4 eggs. In other words, one large egg, I'm going to say, is 2 of their eggs. Praying this works. Fingers crossed. Because her instructions are very easy. She reads 1/4 of a pound of rice, a stick of cinnamon, to a quart of milk, stirring often to keep from burning, and boil quick, cool, and add half a nutmeg, 4 spoons of rose water, 8 eggs, butter or puff pastry, a dish, and pour the above composition into it and bake 1 hour and 30 minutes. Well, basically, she said, and bake 1.5 hours. So our puddings are usually cooked anywhere around 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. So I think she's using a 300 oven, a 300 degree oven. So that's what I'm going to do it at. Hope it works. Now I know eggs are a binder. I know rice has a starch, which is a binder. So this should work. Okay, so we're going to be winging this a bit to see how this comes out. If it doesn't come out, you're going to see the biggest flop. All right, so let me get, they want a 1/4 pound of rice. I'm going to be going back and forth doing this. This is the only time you will ever, when I make rice pudding, is when I use white rice. I'm just warning you, it's the only time I'm going to see me using it. I'm not going to add anything extra to this because I want to see how this recipe comes out before I start playing around to make it more nutritious. So you're going to need a scale, and we need a 1/4 pound, which is 4 ounces. So I'm just going to pour. Okay. I'm going to tie this up until I get it to a jar, and I'll put it up. So you want to know how much a 1/4 of a pound of rice is? I have a measuring cup. Let's see where we go with it. That's a 1/2 cup. Okay, now you know how much it is. Let me get this over. So we know we need that. And let's see what we're going to do next. I'm going to be reading and walking you through with this. This is the tiniest cookbook I've ever had. And just think, this was our first cookbook in this country. All right, we're going to rinse it, and we're going to add a cinnamon stick to a quart of milk. Okay. Now, if you don't know what a quart of milk is, I'll tell you right now, it's 4 cups. Thank God I was good in math. I'd be dying if I had to do this any other way. I keep on thinking powdered milk would go great in this, but I'm not going to touch it. Not until I make this and see how good it is. Because rice pudding is sort of blasé. But this one sounds so interesting, just the way it's put together. And the seasonings and flavorings and all. And I'm saying, I have got to try this one. It's not going to get away from me. All right, and they want us to put a cinnamon stick in here too. They didn't say layer it, they said put a cinnamon stick in it. So we'll do that. They also warn that this is going to burn. So be very, very careful. Clean your rice. Now they warn us that this is going to burn if we're not careful, so we are going to be stirring it like crazy. All right, did they tell how long? They just said stir often to keep from burning and boil quick. Then we're gonna cool this down a bit because we're gonna have to add eggs and rose water and half of a nutmeg. Now I cannot tell you how much half a nutmeg is. We're just gonna be gratering half a nutmeg. Okay, my book's over there. I'm gonna be over here stirring. Now I watched a video about, they said the founding mothers, we have founding fathers who did the Constitution, so I'm going to use founding mothers who gave us our first cookbook and all. And when they came here, they said they didn't have breweries close by, so they took barley, molasses, water, set it out to build the foam of what we know as yeast, which we now know as sourdough, which I already knew that they had used things like that. It was interesting. So they used whole grains at that time too, except their, what we call sourdough, or their yeast was made from rye. Barley is rye. So it had a rye flavor to it. That's why the molasses. So they fed it and they left it until it built up that foam, and then they could take it. But how they preserved it, that was another thing. But I know for a fact if it was just a couple, if they make a loaf of bread, it might last a couple of days. But when they started having children, at that time, they didn't have 2 or 3 children. They had 12 or 15. As long as she was fertile, they kept on having children. So they would have had to make bread just about every day to feed them. But I know each person would get 1 slice, and that would be all that they would be allowed to have, because grains were hard to come by. That's like the sugar, the coffee, salt. That's why a lot of these recipes, like we put salt into our rice puddings today, but they didn't do it then because rice was very special. They couldn't get their hands on it, so these were considered priceless. So we're going to have the flavor of the cinnamon. It's going to be cooked into this rice with the milk. And then we're going to be adding nutmeg to this. And then I'm going to butter a dish. I think that'd be the best thing to do, would be to butter a dish, a casserole dish. And I might put it in some water. The casserole dish sit in water to keep it from burning on the bottom, and just let it cook. And I think they cooked it at 325 or maybe 300. They don't say moderate or low or slow. They don't give me any keys on that. They just say an hour and a half. So I'm going to have to wing that. It might be at a shorter time, but we'll see. But anyway. A fun fact, do you know who gave us canning equipment? The French. The French did it. Napoleon, for his troops, a way of preserving food. And the scientists came up. Well, everybody tried, but somebody finally, I'll say, they might not have said a scientist at that time. They might have called him an alchemist or something, but anyway. That's where we get our canning from. Preserved foods came from the French. Napoleon's time to save his army so they could eat. Well, now I am going to be stirring this and cooking this, okay? So I'll be back. Okay, I have it boiling, and I had to turn it down to simmer, and I have it at a simmer, and it will stick to the bottom, so you're gonna have to be careful. Especially on the edges, you could feel the kernels start to stick. Release them right away, start stirring, and don't leave it. And you can start to smell the cinnamon is starting to come through. Now I noticed in this pudding, she does not add sugar to it, so I think she assumes that you're automatically going to sweeten to your taste. It have other ones that have raisins and other seasonings in it, but we will be sweetening this because with the smell of the cinnamon and the nutmeg, we know we're gonna add some to it. Okay, I gotta turn this back up a bit, get it boiling again. So we're gonna cook the rice till it's done with this milk. And the cinnamon is definitely putting its flavor out there. I'm gonna have to continue stirring for a while. I don't want you standing there watching. Okay, showing you that it is boiling. But you can really smell the cinnamon coming out now with the rice. But it does want to stick. Coming along quite well. Since this is an experiment of an old recipe, I figured you should see that I'm not overboiling it, not having it flow over. Now when I get the rice cooked, then what we're going to do is put it to the side and let it cool a bit because we have to put eggs in here. But always remember their chickens were smaller and their eggs were smaller. So if they say 8, 12 eggs or something, I'll sit there and use 1 large egg as the count of 2 eggs for them. So this will probably take all afternoon for me to cook because it's gonna, they say bake for an hour and a half, so we've got a lot of baking to do. But I will definitely have the casserole dish in water. I'll give you a break from it. I am noticing that the texture is getting thicker as this rice cooks because they want it cooked till soft. Because I read the other recipes and they always are mentioning that the rice has to be soft. Okay, my rice is soft. Now I'm not taking the cinnamon stick out or anything. They want us to put this to the side and let it cool a bit, but you can see as the rice cooks and gets cooked that it actually gets thick. All right, so you got a little rate and then we'll move on. Okay, we have that cooling over there, but now they're talking about eggs, rose water, and half of a nutmeg. So I think I better start cracking some eggs. We're talking 4 eggs here, though it reads 8. Remember, they had smaller eggs then. So we're going to assume one of our large eggs is actually 2 of theirs.
we're making a lot of assumptions on some of this because she leaves a lot of steps out because women at that time already knew the basics. If you don't know these basics, you're going to have a really hard time trying to understand these recipes. This is why it's important you learn terminologies and stuff like that and know what they're talking about. So you know, oh, if custards are made this way, you've got to do ABC. If you make a pie and they're just talking about a pastry top, that means the pie underneath does not have a pastry. Then you have to think of the times of what was easy access. Flour was not, sugar was not, salt was not, coffee was not. And if you notice in the old recipes, they use a lot of rose water, which surprises me. Well, I shouldn't be surprised by it. I guess rose water was easier for them to make. All right, now I am going to have to first. Oh, come on, guys. I'm going to grate half of this. Now, when they say mace, that is the shell of a nutmeg that the nutmeg comes out of. So mace is actually, that's why the flavors aren't too far apart. It's the covering actually on top of a nutmeg that we know. I guess we could call it the shell, you know, to get to the nut that was in the center of this. Now when you grate her, don't stay in one position like this in just one area because you'll end up with ridges. What you have to do is run it across the whole thing. And you turn your nut, and then that way you'll make sure that you get it all. Almost. I'm getting there. Now, I can't tell you how much this is. You're sort of going to have to be on your judgment. You'll have to buy nutmeg and just sort of judge it. Now, this doesn't mention any sugar. And that's bothering me a little bit. Let's see. I'm taking a look at it to see. Nope, not there yet. Now, to this, they're all saying 4 spoons of rose water. Now, I don't think they had, let me show you. I don't think they're thinking of spoons like this, okay? What I think they're using were wooden spoons. And that should be just about a tablespoon, I think. I'm trying to hold the book down so I can read it at the same time. Okay. Now they say 4 spoonfuls of rose water. Rose water seemed very, very popular at that time from what I can see from all the recipes. So it must have been easy for them to make. It does smell good. I don't need this for it. Now that's just about everything they said, but the thing that bothers me is this is not sweet. So they might have left the sugar out and that we have to do this, but let's get some of this going first. I'm gonna whisk this together. And they had whisk at that time as well, but they weren't metal, but it was other things that they used. It couldn't beat it the way we could, that's for dang sure. So when you think about their kitchens were very, very, very active at the time. Okay, now I'm gonna have to taste this so we can start adjusting for the sugar. I think we're going to need sugar in this. Oh, this is thickening up nice. Oh my God. You have to come. I have to move you over so you can see this. I'm letting it cool. I hope you can see this. Look how it's thickening up. Isn't that nice? We gotta taste this so I can know if I'm gonna have to add sugar to this or not. We're gonna have to add some sugar. It's really bland. Okay, it's got, you can smell the cinnamon, smell the nutmeg and stuff, but we've got to get some sugar in this. So, I got my sugar. I don't know how much to put in. So, I'm going to use my 1/8 cup measure, which is actually 2 tablespoons at a time, and we'll judge it that way. That's 2. I'm going to be careful with this because I've never made this recipe before. Oh, but it's really coming out nice. I know you guys, I better rinse every spoon I do or you'll sit there and hit the roof. Okay, this is the only way we can do this. I'll add another 2 tablespoons. This one's not a real sweet one, remember that. We have some that have other stuff that we can put in, but there's like 6, 7. It is a... like they said when they serve the eggs and spices, it is understood that you beat them well before you add it to this. That's my cinnamon stick. I'm not going to get a new spoon every time I do it, I'll just rinse it. Four tablespoons is more than enough for this. Because remember, they don't want it sugar sweet, so you've got a different taste we're dealing with here. Okay. This is still hot. We cannot pour the eggs in yet. We're going to have to do it the way we normally do custards and puddings. We're going to have to spoon this in while we're beating this. So I need a mat. Is there anything else I should know on this recipe? Yeah, I have to butter a casserole dish. Okay. We're not going to add a pastry on top of this. I don't want to do that. Now, they do make custards, and they do say to cook it in the water the way that we're supposed to, but they're saying with this pudding, they're not stating that. And I'm just wondering, if I put it in the oven at 300 and leave it, and they say bake 1.5 hours, would that be all right? Okay, well, we'll find out. You're going to have to beat these eggs and pour a little bit of this at a time, just like we would normally do. Because when it's hot, we're going to give it a problem. You see? And here it is. I'll put puddings we usually do on top of the stoves, but they want this one baked. Okay, so let me get the casserole dish out. No, she doesn't say put boiling water in it or not, but we are going to turn the oven on to 300. Because I think that's a nice temperature to do this without burning it. I don't know if it's going to work at 300. But I checked at 325 and they sit there and say that's 45 minutes. So I figured she wants it even at a lower temperature than that. So we're going to butter this dish to the best of our abilities. So they were baking puddings, whereas we pretty much know that we just do it in a double boiler or in a saucepan on the stove. They did it different. This is how they would do it. So as you can see, there was a lot of work. That's why the woman had the rocking chair in the kitchen, because while she was waiting for things, cooking, she could keep an eye on them and she could do her handwork. She could read her Bible and do the things that she had to do. And if the man went to work, well, if he wasn't out tending to the animals and tending to the garden and the barn and everything, it was like he was going to work. She wouldn't see him unless it was lunchtime or something, the time for dinner, and the sun comes down because everyone was so busy. And children, each child had a job to do. I know when we went to the hunting camp, mine was the 2 pails of water for the day. And I learned you had 1 bowl and you use that to rinse your vegetables. You peeled your vegetables and then you put them in there and you rinse them. And I told my father, how are you going to get the dirt off? He said, dirt settles to the bottom. Sure enough, it did. There. All right, we're coming down to the end of this. Look at the rich color of this as I pour it in here. Look at that. Isn't that rich? Don't worry, there's some other recipes for rice pudding that we'll try as well. And we'll just go through these and see how it comes out. But you have to basically know how to make pudding to understand these recipes, and you have to know your weights and stuff. Because you have to be able to convert, and you have to be able to search out her terminology that she uses. If you don't know her terminologies, you're going to get lost in her cooking. I had to go and look it up. Some of it I didn't know, some of it I knew, and some of it I didn't know, so I had to go and search. But this has a lovely rose and nutmeg flavor. We're not doing anything else with this. We're just going to cook this now. I cannot wait to try this and see how this comes out. But I'm going to put this in here so it doesn't burn on the bottom because it's going to be there for a long time. Okay. Let me get a little more water in there. Well, when it gets up there, I'm going to put it in and I'll be timing it an hour and a half and I will show you when it's done, okay?
Okay, we're gonna check it now and see how it is. You know what? It is done. I'll show you. It's done. Oh my goodness. Here it is. Doesn't that look good? I can't wait to try this. Take care. Bye-bye.